On a humid July morning in Atlanta, Georgia, Marcus Thompson, a 34-year-old black man, walked into the local branch of First National Bank with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He approached the teller with a polite smile, ready to deposit $10,000 in cash, money he had saved over years of hard work. The teller, a young woman named Sarah, glanced at him, then at the stack of bills, her expression shifting from professional to uneasy. Within minutes, the bank manager was involved, and soon after, 2 police officers entered the building. Marcus, bewildered, was handcuffed and led out in front of stunned onlookers. The accusation? Suspicion of money laundering. What no one in that bank knew was that Marcus's explanation for the money would unravel a chain of events that exposed systemic flaws, challenged assumptions, and brought a community together in a fight for justice. Marcus sat in the back of the police cruiser, his wrists aching from the tight cuffs. He asked the officers what he'd done wrong, but their responses were curt, evasive. At the precinct, he was questioned for hours. The interrogating officer, Detective Harris, leaned forward, his tone sharp. "Where does a guy like you get 10 grand in cash?" Marcus, maintaining his composure, explained that he had been saving for years, working 2 jobs, one as a delivery driver and another as a part-time mechanic. The money was for a down payment on a house, a dream he had nurtured since his mother passed away 5 years earlier. Harris raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "You expect me to believe you saved all that up? No funny business." Marcus nodded, his voice steady. "It's the truth." The officers pressed harder, asking for proof of his income, bank statements, anything to verify his story. Marcus provided what he could, but the cash deposit had raised red flags on the bank's anti-money laundering protocols. Federal regulations required banks to report large cash transactions, and Marcus's deposit had triggered an automatic alert. The bank manager, wary of the amount in Marcus's appearance, casual clothes, no suit or briefcase, had called the police without hesitation. To them, Marcus didn't fit the profile of someone with legitimate access to such funds. The assumption stung, but Marcus stayed calm, repeating his story. He had no criminal record, no history of trouble, but the officers seemed determined to find a crack in his account. Hours passed in the precinct's cold, fluorescent-lit room. Marcus's mind raced, replaying the moment he walked into the bank. He had been proud, excited even to deposit the money. It represented years of sacrifice, late nights, early mornings, missed holidays with friends. His mother, Clara, had always told him, "Work hard, keep your head down, and you'll make it." He had followed her advice, saving every extra dollar, avoiding debt, and dreaming of a home where he could build a future for himself and his younger sister, Aisha, who was now in college. But now, sitting in that interrogation room, Marcus felt the weight of suspicion pressing down on him. He wondered if his mother's advice had been enough in a world quick to judge him by his skin. Detective Harris returned the file, tossing it onto the table. "Your story checks out so far, but we're holding you until we can confirm everything. Cash like that doesn't just show up." Marcus's frustration grew, but he held it in check. He asked for a lawyer, knowing his rights from years of hearing stories about men like him caught in similar situations. The officer hesitated, then nodded, leaving the room. Marcus was alone again, staring at the bare walls, his mind turning to the money still sitting at the bank. Would he lose it? Would this derail his plans? He thought of Aisha, who looked up to him, and the promise he'd made to their mother to protect her. By evening, Marcus was allowed a phone call. He reached out to his friend Jamal, a local community organizer who had connections with civil rights attorneys. Jamal was furious when he heard what happened. "They can't do this to you, man. This is profiling, plain and simple." Jamal contacted a lawyer named Rachel Carter, known for taking on cases of racial injustice. Rachel arrived at the precinct within the hour, her presence commanding. She demanded to see Marcus and the evidence against him. The officers, caught off guard by her intensity, produced the bank's report and Marcus's statements. Rachel reviewed them carefully, her eyes narrowing. "This is thin," she said. "You have no grounds to hold him." Rachel's arrival marked a turning point. She argued that Marcus's detention was based on nothing more than the bank's suspicion and the officer's bias. The cash deposit, while large, was not illegal, and Marcus had provided a plausible explanation. She demanded his immediate release, threatening to escalate the matter to the media and file a formal complaint. The precinct captain, wary of bad publicity, agreed to let Marcus go, but warned that the investigation into money's origins would continue. Marcus walked out into the night, free but shaken. Rachel assured him she would fight to clear his name entirely. "This isn't over," she said. "We're going to make this right." The next morning, news of Marcus's arrest spread through social media. Jamal had posted about it, framing it as another case of racial profiling. The post gained traction, with hundreds of shares and comments from people who had faced similar scrutiny for simply handling their own money. Local activists organized a rally outside the bank, demanding accountability. Marcus, hesitant at first, agreed to speak at the rally, standing before a crowd of supporters. He shared his story, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I worked for every dollar of that money. I saved it to build a future, not to be treated like a criminal." The crowd cheered, their signs reading, "Banking while black is not crime," and "Justice for Marcus." The rally caught the attention of local news outlets, and soon national media picked up the story. Reporters dug into Marcus's background, verifying his employment history and savings. His delivery job with a logistics company and his mechanic work at a small garage were well documented. Co-workers vouched for his work ethic, describing him as reliable and dedicated. Aisha, now 20, spoke to a journalist about her brother's sacrifices. "He's been like a father to me since Mom died. That money was for our future, for a home where we could feel safe." Her words resonated, humanizing Marcus in the eyes of the public. The bank issued a statement, claiming their actions followed standard protocol for large cash deposits. They denied racial bias, insisting the manager had acted out of caution, but the public wasn't buying it. Online, people shared their own stories of being questioned or detained for routine financial transactions. A black business owner recounted being flagged for depositing $8,000 from a catering event. A Latina mother described how her cash deposit for her daughter's college tuition led to a police visit. The stories painted a picture of systemic distrust toward people of color in financial institutions. Rachel, meanwhile, was building a case. She requested records from the bank, including their training materials on anti-money laundering protocols. She discovered that the bank's guidelines emphasized discretion, but offered vague criteria for flagging suspicious customers. The manager's decision to call the police seemed to hinge on Marcus's appearance and the cash itself, not any concrete evidence of wrongdoing. Rachel also learned that the bank had a history of similar incidents, with 3 other customers of color reporting unfair scrutiny over deposits in the past year. She prepared to file a lawsuit alleging racial discrimination and unlawful detention. As the case gained momentum, Marcus received a call from a woman named Linda Carter, no relation to Rachel, who worked for a local nonprofit focused on financial equity. Linda offered to help Marcus navigate the legal process and connect him with resources to protect his savings. She also suggested he meet with a financial advisor to ensure his money was secure. Marcus, grateful for support, began to see his ordeal as part of a larger fight. He wasn't just defending himself. He was challenging a system that too often assumed guilt based on race. Weeks passed, and the investigation into Marcus's money concluded with no evidence of the legality. The police issued a reluctant apology, citing procedural errors. The bank, under pressure, agreed to release Marcus's funds, but he refused to return to their branch. Instead, he opened an account at a credit union known for its community focus. The credit union's manager, a black woman named Denise, welcomed him warmly. "We're here to help you build that future," she said, shaking his hand. Marcus felt a sense of relief he hadn't known since the ordeal began. Rachel's lawsuit moved forward, seeking damages and policy changes at First National Bank. She argued that their practices disproportionately harmed people of color, violating federal anti-discrimination laws. The case drew support from civil rights organizations, who saw it as a chance to set a precedent. Legal experts noted that while banks were required to report large cash transactions, the discretion given to employees often led to biased decisions. A study cited in court showed that Black and Hispanic customers were flagged at higher rates than white customers for similar transactions. Marcus's story continued to inspire. He spoke at community events, sharing how his mother's lessons about hard work and resilience had carried him through. He began mentoring young people in his neighborhood, encouraging them to save and plan for their futures despite systemic barriers. Aisha, inspired by her brother, started a campus group to raise awareness about financial discrimination. Together, they turned their pain into purpose, determined to make a difference. The lawsuit's outcome was uncertain, but Marcus felt a shift within himself. He had walked into that bank a man with a dream, only to be treated as a suspect. Yet, through his resolve and the support of his community, he had reclaimed his story. The $10,000, once a symbol of his struggle, became a testament to his strength. As he signed the papers for his new home a year later, with Aisha by his side, Marcus knew that his fight had been about more than money. It was about dignity, justice, and the right to be seen for who he truly was. The case against First National Bank went to trial in the spring of the following year. Rachel presented a compelling argument, backed by data and testimony from other affected customers. The bank's defense leaned heavily on their compliance with federal regulations, but the jury was swayed by the pattern of discriminatory practices. They awarded Marcus $50,000 in damages and mandated that the bank revise its training to address implicit bias. The victory was bittersweet. Marcus knew no amount of money could erase the humiliation of that day, but it was a step toward accountability. Marcus used part of the settlement to establish a scholarship fund in his mother's name, supporting young people of color pursuing careers in finance. He wanted others to know that their dreams, like his, were worth fighting for. The fund's first recipient was a young woman from his neighborhood who dreamed of becoming a financial advisor. At the scholarship ceremony, Marcus spoke briefly, his voice steady. "This is for my mother, Clara, who taught me that no one can take away your worth if you hold on to it." The ripple effects of Marcus's case were felt beyond Atlanta. Other banks began reviewing their policies, spurred by the negative publicity and the threat of similar lawsuits. Community organizations launched campaigns to educate people about their rights when banking. Marcus, once a private man, became a reluctant advocate, speaking at conferences and meeting with policymakers. He never sought the spotlight, but he embraced the chance to amplify others' voices. Years later, Marcus stood in the backyard of his new home, watching Aisha play with her friends during a housewarming barbecue. The house was modest, but is a symbol of everything he had overcome. He thought back to that day at the bank, the fear and anger he had felt. But he also thought of the community that had rallied around him, the lawyer who fought for him, and the sister who believed in him. His revelation, that hard work and truth could prevail, even against a system stacked against him, had changed everything. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a story of justice, shared by many, and it was far from over.